Welcome to Hazel and Alex's third video about our holiday home in Spain. So, the power of attorney has now been sorted with our solicitor and sent to the Foreign Office. Everything's over there with the solicitor, so she's got power of attorney to act on our behalf in Spain. She's then gone on to sort out our NIE numbers. So that's an NIE number is something that you need to open any bank account or utility account over in Spain.
You also need to register that for tax purposes as well, because as obviously you need to pay rates and things to the local communities, but also you also need to pay a tax in Spain for having a holiday home. Whether you rent your holiday home or not, you'll still need to pay a tax. If you do rent it, then you'll pay tax on whatever you earn, but even if you don't rent it, there'll still be a tax to pay. So hence the NIE numbers.
It does take a few weeks to sort out, doesn't it?
It does.
But our solicitor, because she didn't want things to go slow, she went for temporary NIE numbers, but then a cancellation came through and luckily we could get permanent NIE numbers. So one tip I would have in hindsight is, before you go out viewing properties, get an NIE number. You can do it online. It's really easy to do. It's not very costly. I'd do that first. If you want to act quick, it depends on your situation really, if you're a cash buyer or if you've got a mortgage, but it did seem to drag a little bit. But then when we got the permanent NIE numbers, we were really chuffed, weren't we? Because it was like, it's starting to move now. And
I think that's the thing, obviously we mentioned in the last video that it sort of took 3-4 weeks for the power of attorney, things sort of seemed to drag. But as soon as these NIE numbers hit, then literally the day after, the bank accounts were open, so our current account for our bank was open, which was really important because we needed then to start to transfer money out there to pay for the valuation on the property. So I immediately arranged to, and this is one tip I would give, is make sure that you've got registered with a couple of different currency exchange companies. So Place in the Sun currency exchange, they're quite good. Excel currency exchange, register with them. They'll all give slightly different rates, better rates or not, but you can ring then and say, look, I want to transfer so much money, and they'll give you a rate, which they lock you into. They lock you into that rate. You then have sort of 48 hours to pay and where it needs to be transferred to. There is a bit of paperwork around it, but it's not massively, but it's really good, and it's a lot better than trying to transfer from your bank. The rate that you're going to get is a lot better than you are going to try and send money from your bank account straight out to Spain to somewhere else.
In hindsight, that deposit that you pay, the 6,000, we'd not done it at that stage, so we got stung a bit, but we didn't know. It's all new, but in hindsight, that would be another tip that I'd give.
Definitely.
We went to a Place in the Sun to the conference, didn't we? Where they show you around and they give you advice, and they actually told us about that, but we didn't do it. But that would be another tip.
So I would get that sorted. Obviously, as I said, bank accounts are open, and then send some money out because obviously we need to instruct the valuation. The valuation, now in different parts of Spain, the valuation is still the same, the value of the property, but depending on the value of the property depends on the amount of tax that you pay. So even though you buy a property, say for €100,000, then that €100,000 is what you agree to pay the seller. But there's also what's called an IVA tax, as a property that's not new. That tax can vary between regions.
Murcia.
So for example, in Murcia, that tax is around about 8%. In Alicante, it's 10%. Okay. So when they talk about obviously the add-on cost of buying a property, you've got to incorporate that. There's then various other things that you've got to pay for as well, in relation to no'3 fees and solicitors fees and whatever else. So what people talk about is adding on another maybe 3 to 4% on top of that tax as an average cost as to what it's going to be. So if you bought a property, for example, for €100,000, then I would say you would need to be able to pay €114,000 because that's what's going to cost you with all your taxes and all your other bits and pieces. That additional €14,000 though cannot be mortgaged. You need to have that in cash. So that is quite an important point, that if you have to take a mortgage out there like we have done, they have mortgaged us for 70% of the value. So if we look at it in this way, 100,000, they give us 70, we've got to put 30,000 down. Obviously, we've paid 6, it takes you 6 off, so that's 24, but we've also got to pay the additional 14, so you've then got to pay sort of 38,000 on top, yeah, to complete. So just be mindful, yeah, that when you are doing this, that you build all of that in when you're looking at properties and looking for things.
So as we've said previously, we've not been to this property, so we were quite keen to get the valuation back, weren't we? So to do the valuation, obviously they send the bank like they do in the UK, and they do all the necessary checks. So we're quite excited to get the documentation back with all the photos, which gave us even more information, and we were really chuffed with what we saw. So it's nice to know that somebody that's a building surveyor has been out to look at the property, and they've said, yeah, actually it is worth what you've put in, everything's sound, everything's safe, and the bank have agreed it is worth that. Yeah. So yeah. Can
I just say at this point as well, there's lots of things when you're on the internet looking about these things about what they do, but to be fair, I think the cost for our valuation was 149 euros or something, so around 150 euros. They came back and they valued the property very close to the value that we paid for it, and that's quite important because you pay tax on the value that the valuation is, not on what you've agreed to buy it for. Yeah. So if that difference is a lot different, then you'll pay a lot more tax on that, and you'll also have to stump up difference in the mortgage. If it's very, very close, then it works quite well, yeah? And if it's under, then they won't give you a mortgage. They'll only give you a mortgage on the valuation, not on what you bought it for. That's what it said. So it's quite important that that comes back quite close. As I said, from our perspective, ours came back within about, I think it was about 100 euros or something of the actual valuation of the value that we paid for it. So agreed to pay for it. So it was very, very close. So that was fine. That's good. And as I say, it gave us a lot of information about the property that previously we hadn't had.
That can take about 2 to 3 weeks, that process. Yeah. So like I said in the last video, when you're signing your contract, when you put your offer in, I'd make sure, they will push for 8 weeks, but I'd make sure there's 12 weeks, just in case anything takes a lot longer. The Spanish have a lot of religious holidays, and they have a lot of time off, and they will not be in work. It is mañana, mañana, mañana. And at this stage, it's really frustrating because you just want a date. Yeah. I was getting really stressed out because I just wanted a date, but like the solicitor said, you are at the mercy of the bank at this stage. So
at this point, obviously, we've gone for valuation. The valuation needs to come back before the bank can agree the final mortgage, and there's not a lot we can do at this point in time. The solicitor at this point has had all the stuff back from the architect. They've agreed and they've made sure that the property is clear of any bills and whatever else. We did have one problem in the sense that there was a water leak outside of the property, but we couldn't quite determine where.
Just on the boundary.
It happened to be on the boundary. The estate agent, we pushed them a little bit, but we were very good. They got somebody out, they got that sorted, so we knew that was clear. They gave us all the details of that, so that was good, so we know we've sorted that. So the solicitor was then happy to proceed. At this point, you then have to send everything to the mortgage people, and we're waiting on them then to come back and say, right, okay, everything's good to go. But as our solicitor said, we're at the mercy of the bank, but once the bank do agree that, they really do want to move quite quickly at that point in time.
They do, but there's a 10-day cooling off period. So you might think, right, okay, but no, you're still not there, unfortunately. Which, we didn't know. So the 10-day cooling off period kicks in then, and then the date of completion was given, which was the 30th of May. So on the original contract that we signed to take the property off the market, that was 2 weeks before then.
So it was the 13th of May, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was. So fortunately we'd not booked any flights because we still weren't sure. As much as I was dying to, we waited, but it is the waiting game, isn't it? You're desperate to get out there, but you can't really.
No. Yeah. So once, like I say, they turned around and said it was going to be obviously the 30th of May for completion. One of the mistakes I did make in all of that was that I actually sent more money to my Spanish bank account than I probably needed to at an earlier point. And I didn't get the rate was good, but I didn't get the best rate, because after that the rate started to rise. So I could have achieved slightly more. And you know, I mean, when you're sending a large amount of money out, over £50,000, then actually, you know, I mean, they're moving the rate of point like 1 or like 0.1 can mean the difference of hundreds of euros, which when you're paying solicitor fees and no'3 fees and land registry fees and other things like that, it's quite significant, So I would just say, just be careful on your dates and your timing and all the rest of it, and make sure that, you know, I mean, everything is right. As I said, we've now got to the point where we've agreed a date, for completion. We're in the 10-day cooling off period. That date for completion is 2 weeks after so we've got this 10-day cooling off period. We've now got to the point where our completion date is due to be the 30th of May, obviously, ideally we'd like to be out there for that, but unfortunately that is not going to be the case. So we're now going to get to the point where we're going to complete, and we have completed. And our next video is going to be us literally on our way out to Spain and getting the keys and looking at this place that we've bought out there. So again, please subscribe, please like our videos. If you want to see more, please let us know. Our next video is literally going to be on the plane, arriving in Spain and looking at our brand new house out there that we've just bought. So if you'd like to follow this story more, and we will continue the story after that as to what we do and how we move forward from there. But please subscribe, press like, do you know what I mean? And hopefully we'll speak to you soon.